Admiral Stone stood at the main viewport of the United Earth Defense Force Command Center, his weathered hands clasped behind his back. Through the reinforced glass, he watched as Earth's blue sphere hung peacefully in space, but that peace was about to end. They came without warning. First, it was just a slight disturbance in space, like ripples in a pond. Then the fabric of reality itself seemed to tear open, and through these wounds in space came the ships of the galactic hegemony. They were massive beyond comprehension, each vessel larger than Earth's biggest cities. "Sir," Lieutenant Rogers called from his monitoring station, his voice steady despite the fear visible in his eyes. "We're counting over 300 vessels. The smallest one is roughly the size of Manhattan." Stone nodded silently. Humanity had prepared for first contact for decades, but nothing could have truly prepared them for this. The alien ships arranged themselves in a perfect geometric pattern, their dark hulls blocking out the stars behind them. They were beautiful in a terrifying way, like watching a tsunami approach. "Multiple energy signatures detected," Captain Wells reported from her station. "They're powering up something, sir, but they're not aiming weapons at us. Yet." Before Stone could respond, every screen in the command center flickered to life. Every phone on Earth lit up. Every radio, television, and computer displayed the same image, a being that looked almost like a statue made of crystal and metal. When it spoke, its voice was everywhere. "People of Earth," the creature's words were perfectly translated, suggesting they had been studying humanity for some time. "We are the galactic hegemony, the ruling force of 5,000 star systems. We have watched your development with great interest. You have now reached a level where you qualify for integration." Stone felt his jaw tighten. He had spent enough time in military negotiations to recognize a threat wrapped in diplomatic language. "The terms are simple," the crystalline being continued. "You will provide annual tribute of 30% of all your planet's resources. Additionally, 100,000 humans will be selected yearly for cultural exchange programs within the hegemony. In return, you will receive our protection and limited access to our technologies." The command center was silent. Stone could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. "You have 24 of your hours to submit your formal acceptance," the being said. "If you choose to decline." The transmission suddenly showed a recording of what was clearly another civilization's planet. A beam of light descended from one of the hegemony ships, and the entire continent below simply disappeared. "The choice is yours," the being concluded. "We await your response." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Stone looked around at his crew. These were Earth's finest, men and women who had faced space disasters, asteroid threats, and every challenge humanity had encountered in its push to the stars. Now they looked shaken to their core. But there was something else in their eyes too, something that made Stone proud to be human. It was defiance. "Sir," Lieutenant Rogers spoke up, his voice stronger now. "Initial analysis suggests their ships have some kind of quantum-based shielding. Their weapons operate on principles we've never seen before. We can't match them in direct combat." Stone turned back to the viewport, watching the alien armada. "Get me a direct line to the Emergency Council in Geneva," he ordered, "and contact the Antarctic facility. Tell Dr. Marcus." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Tell him it's time to wake up Project Defiance." As the crew rushed to carry out his orders, Stone remembered an old quote from humanity's history: "I would rather die standing than live on my knees." Soon, humanity would have to make exactly that choice. The next 24 hours would determine not just the fate of humanity, but what kind of species they truly were. Would they submit to live as slaves, or risk extinction to remain free? As Stone watched Earth's sun rise over the planet's curve, he already knew what his vote would be. The real question was, would the rest of humanity stand with him? The United Earth Council chamber in Geneva was never meant to be this full. Representatives from all 200 nations sat shoulder to shoulder in the circular room, their faces lit by the blue glow of emergency lighting. The normal procedures and formalities had been forgotten. There was no time for them now. Ambassador Reed stood at the central podium, her gray hair neat despite the late hour. "We have 19 hours left," she said, her voice firm. "Every minute we spend arguing is a minute wasted." On the main screen behind her, satellite footage showed the hegemony ships still hanging in perfect formation above Earth. They hadn't moved an inch since their arrival. "The choice is simple," said the Chinese representative, standing up. "We submit and survive, or we fight and die. Why are we even debating this?" Murmurs filled the room. The Russian representative shook his head. "Submit, and send our people to be their slaves. Give them our resources until Earth is nothing but an empty shell." The military advisor, General Thompson, stepped forward. His uniform was wrinkled from the emergency flight to Geneva. "Our analysis is complete," he said, pointing to the tactical display. "Their ships use technology we can't even understand. One of their smaller vessels could destroy our entire fleet." "Then we have no choice," the Brazilian representative shouted. "We must accept their terms." Ambassador Reed slammed her hand on the podium. The sound echoed through the chamber, silencing everyone. "No choice?" she asked quietly. "There is always a choice." She pressed a button, and the screen changed to show images from human history. "Look at our past," she said. "How many times have people faced impossible odds? How many times have the weak stood up to the strong?" The images continued to flow. Ancient battles, revolution movements, protests against tyranny. Every time humanity faced extinction, we survived. Every time someone tried to enslave us, we fought back. We're still here because we never gave up. "But this is different," the Indian representative argued. "These aren't human enemies. Their power is beyond anything we faced." A message flashed on Reed's private screen. Her eyes widened slightly as she read it. It was from the Antarctic facility. Project Defiance was ready. "Maybe their power is greater," Reed admitted. "But power isn't everything. They expect us to submit because everyone else has. They think they know exactly what will happen. But they don't know humans." She straightened up, looking at each representative in turn. "If we submit, we teach our children that freedom has a price. That it's okay to live on your knees if standing is too hard. Is that the legacy we want to leave?" The room was silent now. Even those who had argued for submission seemed lost in thought. "We have something they don't expect," Reed continued. "Something they can't understand. We have the spirit that let us crawl out of caves and reach for the stars. We have the determination that helped us survive ice ages and asteroids and our own mistakes." The African Union representative stood up slowly. "And what if we fail? What if we fight and lose everything?" Reed smiled. It wasn't a happy smile, but a determined one. "Then we lose everything fighting for our freedom instead of giving it away. And maybe we show others in the galaxy that the hegemony isn't invincible." General Thompson's communicator beeped. He read the message and nodded to Reed. The Antarctic facility was reporting success in their initial tests. "The vote starts now," Reed announced. "But remember, we're not just voting for ourselves. We're voting for every human who will ever live. For every species that's already submitted to the hegemony. For everyone who's ever dreamed of standing up to a bully and saying no." As the voting began, Reed watched the representatives make their choices. In less than 18 hours, humanity would give its answer to the hegemony. And if her reading of the room was right, it would be an answer that would shake the galaxy. 2 miles beneath the Antarctic ice, Dr. Marcus watched the quantum core pulse with bright blue light. The massive chamber housing Project Defiance hummed with power, ice walls reinforced with steel containing the greatest secret humanity had ever kept. "Power levels at 80%, called out Dr. Wilson from her monitoring station. Sweat ran down her face despite the cold. They'd never pushed the system this hard before. Marcus checked his tablet, scrolling through streams of data. For 30 years, the best scientists from every nation had worked here in secret, preparing for a day they hoped would never come. Now that day was here, and they had less than 17 hours to get everything right. "The quantum field is stable," reported Dr. Lee, his fingers flying over his keyboard. "But we've never tested it at this scale. If we try to cover the whole planet..." He left the sentence unfinished. They all knew the risks. Marcus walked to the central platform, where a holographic display showed their project's true scale. Small dots of light represented the thousands of quantum transmitters they'd hidden around the world, in old bunkers, underwater, inside mountains, each one looking like innocent research equipment to any orbital scans. "Send the test signal," Marcus ordered. He touched the old dog tags hanging around his neck, a reminder of what they were fighting for. His father had warned them in humanity's last great war. Now his son was fighting in what might be their final one. The room's lights dimmed as power flowed into the quantum core. On the display, dozens of dots lit up green as transmitters activated across Antarctica. The ice above them creaked as invisible quantum fields began to form. "Field strength at 30%, Wilson reported. "No signs of instability." Marcus nodded, but his expression remained worried. 30% was nothing. They needed full planetary coverage, and they needed it to work perfectly. One mistake, one miscalculation, and they could tear apart the fabric of space itself. "Sir," Lee suddenly called out, "getting weird readings from the alien fleet. They're ships, they're moving." Everyone froze. If the hegemony had detected their tests. But the hologram showed the alien ships were just shifting positions slightly, maintaining their perfect formation. They hadn't noticed anything. Yet. "They're not as perfect as they think they are," Marcus said, studying the data. "Look at these energy patterns. They're quantum shielding. It has a rhythm to it, like a heartbeat." He quickly typed calculations into his tablet. "Their technology is more advanced than ours, but it follows the same basic principles. If we time our quantum disruption fields to match their shield cycles, we could shut down their entire fleet," Wilson finished, eyes widening. "But the power required, it would push our system far beyond safety limits." Marcus looked around the room at his team. These people had given up normal lives to work here, believing that humanity would someday face a threat like this. Now everything depended on them. "Dr. Lee," he said, "send all our data to the Defense Force and the Council. They need to know exactly what we can do and what it might cost." As Lee transmitted the files, Marcus studied the quantum core again. The blue light pulsed faster now, like it was eager to be used. Their creation wasn't just a weapon or a shield. It was humanity's response to any advanced civilization that thought superior technology meant superior rights. "Begin full power tests," he ordered. "If humanity votes to fight, we need to be ready." The core's hum grew louder. In the next few hours, they would either save Earth or destroy it. But as Marcus watched his team work, he felt something he hadn't expected: hope. The hegemony thought they had humanity trapped. They didn't realize they were about to meet something they'd never encountered before. A species that had spent its entire history preparing for fights it wasn't supposed to win. The 24-hour deadline was almost up. Admiral Stone stood in the United Earth Defense Force Command Center, watching the final minutes tick away on the giant display. Behind him, the crew worked in tense silence, each person aware that they were living through humanity's most important moment. The Council's vote had been completed an hour ago. Now Stone held a small data card in his hand. Humanity's official response to the hegemony's demands. He thought about all the people who had helped prepare for this moment. Dr. Marcus and his team in Antarctica, Ambassador Reed in Geneva, and millions of others who didn't even know their role yet. "Sir," Lieutenant Rogers said quietly, "the hegemony is broadcasting again." The crystalline alien appeared on their screens once more. "Your time for deliberation is nearly complete," it announced. "We trust you have made the wise choice. Prepare to transmit your formal acceptance of our generous terms." Stone took a deep breath and stepped forward to the main communication console. Captain Wells moved aside to give him access, her face showing a mix of fear and pride. Communications ready, sir, she reported. All channels open. The whole world is watching. And they were. Every television, phone, and computer screen on Earth showed this moment. In homes and offices, in crowded cities and remote villages, 7 billion humans held their breath. Stone inserted the data card. The Council's vote had been clear. 189 nations had voted against submission. Only 11 had voted to accept the hegemony's terms. The choice had been made. Hegemony command. Stone spoke clearly and calmly. This is Admiral James Stone of the United Earth Defense Force. I am authorized to deliver humanity's response to your demands. The crystalline being's face showed no emotion. Proceed with your acceptance, Admiral. Stone's finger hovered over the transmit button. In Antarctica, Dr. Marcus and his team watched their monitors, ready to activate Project Defiance. In Geneva, Ambassador Reeves stood with the Council, watching the broadcast. In military bases around the world, pilots sat in their fighters, ready to launch. Our response, Stone said, is as follows. He pressed the button. Across all frequencies in every language, Earth transmitted a single word. No. The silence that followed seemed to last forever. The crystalline being actually flickered, as if experiencing a glitch. When it spoke again, its perfect translation seemed confused for the first time. We do not understand, it said. This response is illogical. You have seen our power. You cannot hope to resist. Do you wish for your civilization to end? Stone stood straighter. We understand your power perfectly, he replied. We also understand what acceptance would mean. Slavery, submission, the end of human freedom. And we have decided that some things are worth fighting for. This is unprecedented, the being said. No species has ever rejected our terms. We offer you one final chance to reconsider. In the Antarctic facility, Dr. Marcus watched the power levels rise in the quantum core. In orbit, Earth's defense satellites silently changed position. In bunkers around the world, hidden weapons powered up. We will not reconsider, Stone said firmly. Humanity's answer remains the same. No. The crystalline being's image grew larger, its voice thundering. Then you have chosen extinction. Your world will serve as an example to others who might consider such foolish defiance. Stone allowed himself a small smile. Actually, he said, I think we're about to show the galaxy something very different. He pressed another button, sending the signal that would activate every hidden defense system Earth had prepared. As alarms began to sound throughout the command center, Stone thought about history, about how humanity had survived ice ages, plagues, and its own wars, about how humans always fought hardest when someone told them they couldn't win. All stations, he ordered, battle positions. Let's show the hegemony why you should never corner a species that specializes in impossible victories. The hegemony struck first. Their massive ships lit up like angry stars, energy weapons charging to unleash destruction on Earth. The crystalline commander had promised to make an example of humanity, and they meant to keep that promise. But Earth was ready. Deep beneath the Antarctic ice, Dr. Marcus watched the quantum core reach full power. Now, he shouted, activate all transmitters. Around the world, thousands of hidden quantum devices switched on at once. A web of invisible energy spread across Earth, growing stronger with each passing second. In space, Admiral Stone watched his tactical display as the shield formed. The hegemony ships fired. Beams of energy that could vaporize continents struck Earth's quantum shield. For a terrible moment, everyone held their breath. Then the impossible happened. The beams scattered harmlessly into space. It worked, Captain Wells shouted. The quantum disruption field is holding. In the hegemony fleet, confusion spread quickly. They fired again and again, but their weapons couldn't break through. For the first time in their long history of conquest, their superior technology had failed them. Launch all fighters, Stone ordered. Activate defense platforms. The shield won't last forever. We need to strike while they're confused. Earth's response was immediate. Hidden doors opened in mountains, under oceans, and in deserts around the world. Thousands of fighters took to the sky, while orbital platforms revealed their true nature as weapon stations. Their shields are weakening, Dr. Lee reported from Antarctica. The quantum field is interfering with their systems, just like we hoped. The smaller human ships swarmed around the massive alien vessels like angry bees. Where the hegemony relied on overwhelming power, humanity had learned to fight smart. Each fighter carried weapons specifically designed to exploit the weaknesses Dr. Marcus's team had discovered. In his command ship, the Crystalline Commander watched in disbelief as their invincible fleet began taking damage. Impossible, it said. Their technology is primitive. They cannot harm us. But they could. The quantum disruption field had done more than just block the hegemony's weapons. It had stripped away their technological advantage. Now, they faced an enemy that had spent its entire history learning to fight against superior forces. Target their command ship, Stone ordered. Show them what happens when they threaten Earth. Human fighters struck from all directions, their weapons piercing through the weakened alien shields. The massive hegemony vessels tried to fight back, but their weapons were designed for destroying planets, not dogfighting with agile smaller ships. In Antarctica, Dr. Marcus and his team worked frantically to keep the quantum field stable. Power levels critical, Dr. Wilson warned. We can't maintain this forever. We don't need forever, Marcus replied. We just need long enough. Above Earth, the battle continued to turn. The hegemony ships, unable to use their main weapons and losing their defensive shields, began to break formation for the first time. Their perfect geometric pattern fell apart as human forces struck again and again. Sir, Lieutenant Rogers called out, we're detecting power surges in the enemy fleet. They're trying to retreat. Stone allowed himself a grim smile. Not yet, he said. First, we need to make sure they remember this day. All ships, focus fire on their flagship. Let's give the galaxy a new story to tell. Earth's combined forces turned their attention to the massive command ship. The hegemony vessel, 3 times the size of Manhattan, tried to raise its shields, but against the combined firepower of a species that had refused to submit, even their mighty technology began to fail. As explosions bloomed across the alien flagship's hull, Stone thought about humanity's one-word answer. Sometimes the shortest responses carried the most power. And today, humanity's no was changing the history of the galaxy. The hegemony command ship burned. Pieces of its crystal and metal hull broke away, scattering into space like falling stars. Around it, the once perfect alien fleet had scattered into chaos, their formations broken, their mighty weapons silenced by Earth's quantum field. But victory wasn't certain yet. Quantum core temperature critical. Dr. Wilson's voice crackled through the command center speakers. In Antarctica, red warning lights flashed across every screen as Project Defiance pushed far beyond its design limits. Admiral Stone watched the tactical display, his mind racing. They had hurt the hegemony badly, but if the quantum field failed now, Earth would be defenseless. He had to end this quickly. All ships, form up on these coordinates, he ordered, marking a point just above the damaged command ship. Every fighter, every platform, everything that can still fire. We're going to hit them with everything we have. In the Antarctic facility, Dr. Marcus worked frantically at his console. Sweat froze on his forehead in the sub-zero air as he tried to keep the quantum field stable. Rerouting power from secondary systems, he announced. We can give you 3 more minutes, maybe 4. That's all we'll need, Stone replied. He turned to Captain Wells. Send this message to all Earth forces. Remember what we're fighting for. The human fleet gathered quickly, showing the discipline they'd practiced for years. Fighters moved in perfect formation, their pilots knowing this was the moment that would decide Earth's fate. The remaining hegemony ships tried to regroup around their wounded flagship, but their movements were slow, uncertain. In the command ship, The crystalline commander faced something it had never experienced in 10,000 years of conquest. Fear. Impossible, it whispered, watching the human fleet gather. They are nothing. They have nothing. How can they defeat us? The answer came in a wave of fire. Every human ship, every orbital platform, every ground-based weapon fired at once. The combined firepower of an entire planet, focused on a single point. The hegemony's weakened shields couldn't handle it. The command ship's hull cracked like breaking glass. Explosions chained through its massive structure as human weapons found vital systems. The crystalline commander sent out one final message to its fleet. Retreat. Return to. The transmission cut off as the command ship split apart in a massive explosion. The blast was so bright that people on Earth could see it like a new star in the daytime sky. Enemy command ship destroyed. Lieutenant Rogers reported, his voice shaking with excitement. The rest of their fleet. They're running. The remaining hegemony ships turned away from Earth, their engines glowing as they prepared to flee. Ships that had arrived as unstoppable conquerors were now running for their lives. In Antarctica, the quantum core finally reached its limit. Field failing. Dr. Marcus shouted, shutting down before we lose containment. The quantum field flickered and died, but it didn't matter anymore. The hegemony fleet was already opening jump points, desperately escaping from the primitive species that had done the impossible. Stone watched them go, his expression serious. Track their escape vectors, he ordered. We need to know where they're running to. Sir, Captain Wells said, checking her readings. They're splitting up, taking different paths. I don't think they're heading home. Stone nodded. The hegemony ships were trying to hide their home system's location. They had learned to fear humanity. Admiral. Dr. Marcus's tired voice came through the speakers. The quantum core is safe. We managed to shut it down in time. And sir, you should see what our sensors recorded. The way their ships were breaking up. We can learn so much from the debris. Stone smiled. Humanity had done more than just survive. They had gained advanced alien technology, proven their strength, and shown the galaxy that freedom was worth fighting for. Send word to the Council, he ordered. Tell them Earth is safe, and tell them to get ready. I think we've just joined the galactic community, whether the hegemony likes it or not. 1 week after the battle, Admiral Stone stood in the ruins of the largest hegemony ship that had crashed in the Sahara Desert. The massive wreck stretched for miles, its crystalline structure glinting under Earth's sun. Teams of scientists crawled over it like ants, learning secrets that would advance human technology by centuries. The translation systems are intact, Dr. Marcus reported, walking up with a tablet in his hand. The scientist looked tired but happy. We're already decoding their communications network. And Admiral, you need to hear what we found. He played a recording. Alien voices spoke in many languages, all translated perfectly. The humans did what? They said no. They destroyed the command fleet. How is this possible? Stone smiled. The news of Earth's victory was spreading through the galaxy. But that wasn't the most interesting part. Keep listening, Marcus said. More voices. If Earth could defeat them, perhaps we too can fight. The hegemony is not invincible. It's happening across thousands of worlds. Marcus explained. Every species that submitted to the hegemony is talking about Earth, about freedom, about fighting back. In Geneva, Ambassador Reed was seeing the same thing. The council chamber now hosted holographic representatives from 20 different alien species. Each one had contacted Earth after hearing about the battle. Each one wanted to learn how to say no to the hegemony. Your quantum disruption technology, a gas-based life form, bubbled through its translator. Could it work for other worlds? Reed looked at Dr. Wilson, who had joined the session from Antarctica. The scientist nodded. We can adapt it, Wilson said, and we can improve it using what we learned from the hegemony's own technology. But more importantly, Reed added, we can teach you something stronger than any weapon. We can teach you how to stand together, how to fight even when victory seems impossible. Back in the desert, Stone watched the sunset paint the alien wreck in shades of gold. Lieutenant Rogers approached with an update from the Global Defense Network. "Sir, the last pieces of Project Defiance are being upgraded," Rogers reported. "Dr. Marcus says the new version will be twice as powerful, and we're building more. The hegemony won't catch us by surprise again. They won't attack at all," Stone said confidently. "At least not directly. They've learned that Earth is too dangerous to challenge, but we need to be ready for what comes next." He was right. In the following months, Earth changed faster than ever before. Cities grew upward with new alien materials. Cars were replaced by floating vehicles. Diseases that once seemed unbeatable fell to advanced medical technology. But the biggest change wasn't in technology. It was in humanity's place in the galaxy. 3 months after the battle, the first human embassy opened on an alien world. Not as a subject race, but as equals. As teachers, the species that had said no to the hegemony was now helping others find their courage. "We're receiving another message," Captain Wells announced in the New Earth Defense Headquarters. 3 more worlds have broken away from the hegemony. They're requesting our help." Stone looked at the galactic map showing Earth's growing network of allies. The hegemony's perfect order was falling apart, replaced by something new. A galaxy where freedom wasn't just allowed, but celebrated. "Send them our standard response," he ordered. "Earth stands ready to help any world fight for its freedom." In Antarctica, now a bustling research center, Dr. Marcus watched new scientists arrive from across the galaxy. They came to learn Earth's secrets, but they learned something more important: the power of defiance. Humanity's one-word answer had started something that couldn't be stopped. Across thousands of worlds, billions of beings were learning the simple truth: sometimes the greatest victory comes not from having the strongest weapons, but from having the courage to stand up and say no to those who would take your freedom. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly what humanity had fought for.